It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160, 101.1 FM. State Senator Don White joins us. This is like Lawmakers Day. That's what we're going to call this today because we had Representative Dave Reed on with us earlier. Senator White is here now. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Haven't seen you for a while.
Well, we got out of Harrisburg, the earliest I've gotten out since 2001. First time we've been out in June. So I feel like I have at least a little summer to enjoy.
Sound like you've been released from prison when you get out of there.
Yeah. That's I'd never considered Harrisburg a destination resort, okay? I'm always glad to get it back home.
I want to talk about the budget shortly, but I want to focus upon Senate Bill 936, which was your bill. We talked about this with you on the air a while back, and what the bill does in terms of workman's comp, in terms of the opioid crisis, the benefits that it would provide. Got it through, got it all the way to the governor's desk. He said no, he vetoed it. Let's talk about that a bit.
That was one of the worst experiences of my 18-year career. Here we're talking about injured workers. Now, everybody else, whether it's you or me or a listener out there or somebody in a CHIP program, somebody in a Medicaid, Medicare program, there's a formulary that is oversight as to make sure that we're not being overprescribed opioids for pain medicine, whatever. There's no such thing in workman's comp. And I'm not up here to bash injury trial lawyers, but there's one particular firm in Philadelphia that found a loophole. Now, what they did, they set up their own pharmacy, got their own doctor referral practice in place, and also took the clients that came to them, and they're the biggest workman's comp law firm in Philadelphia, and joined together, and so it was a vicious circle. They got the injured worker who went to a doctor. That doctor referred them to the particular law firm. That law firm referred them not only to the doc, but back to the pharmacy that they owned. And the problem is there's no limits there's no such thing as a drug formulary for workman's comp injured workers. And so if a doctor wants to prescribe a 90-day, 180-day prescription for painkillers, opioids, they can. Now, what's happened, it's happened across the country, but we've had legislation that was bipartisan and passed and has been very effective. For example, in Ohio, once this bill is very similar to mine, passed, they reduced the number of workman's comp injured worker people addicted to opioids in half. In half.
Yeah.
Now, this governor who vetoed this bill has been running around the state for 2 years, and I applauded him all the way through on making Harrisburg really face this issue and get engaged with all the communities. But he appears to me to be awfully hypocritical. And the worst part about it, to me, is the fact in the year prior to this legislation passing, he received over $1.25 million from this law firm, Pond Lahaki, and their associate groups, doctors, whatever, in the last year. If this isn't one of the best examples of pay to play that I've ever seen in Harrisburg, in fact, it's egregious. It's the worst I've ever seen.
I want to read you a quote that the governor said in vetoing this bill. He said, "It is wrong to sacrifice health care for our first responders to protect the bottom line for insurance companies and corporations."
You know, you're not a good politician unless you can argue both sides of any issue, but we're talking about injured workers here. We're talking about facts. We're talking about 50% reduction in injured workers. See, the problem is you and I would receive a bill from the hospital. Injured workers do not. They have no idea at all what's being charged. They don't have to pay anything. There's no deductible, no copay. So the injured worker doesn't even know this. He thinks this is routine. But you know as well as I do, you provide that kind of a drug on an extended basis to somebody, there are going to be issues.
Sure.
And his response, the other part was, in another release he had, he says, well, it interferes with the doctor-patient relationship. Give me a break. What doctor wants to see their patient? Sure, the doctor wants to make sure the patient is not in pain. Mm-hmm. But this is overkill, to say the least.
You spent your life in insurance.
Right.
You know the industry inside and out. You know what all the issues are. You've seen it firsthand as an insurance agent. What is something like this, not getting something like this, what does this do for the insurance industry in Pennsylvania? I would assume it drives up costs tremendously.
Well, it drives up costs dramatically because another loophole that they've used, they take two substances, compounds they're called, and they'll take one compound in your right hand and one compound in your left hand. Let's say they cost $100 a piece. They mesh them together, and these compounds then cost $2,000. They have these creams that whose proof of being effective is marginal, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And this company has made a fortune because I said there's no price controls. No price controls. Insurance industry can't say anything when it has to deal with workman's compensation issues. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how to say it other than this was very disheartening. I've never seen anything more blatant. The Philadelphia Inquirer had 4 articles each week, a new article on this exact issue. That's how I became aware of it. Uh-huh. And yet, when he vetoed it, the Philadelphia Inquirer didn't respond. And I thought, what's going on here? Well, I find out that on their online newspaper publication, online, Ponlahawkie is the biggest advertiser.
Oh.
So, I mean, this is, it's egregious. I think it's obviously wrong. I don't think there's a doctor out there that would want to be put in this position. And
is it dead? I mean, is there no way to revive it?
I'm going to keep doing this. I've been talking to statewide radio networks because I want a response, something better than what he's provided so far. Mm-hmm. I mean, this has not got the news coverage that I think it deserves. This is something that if none of us had a drug formulary, okay, I understand that's the nature of the business, but that's not the case here. We all are under these regulations. Mm-hmm. No doctor is going to be allowed to prescribe you a 90-day opioid. No way.
Yeah.
They wouldn't. The oversight in the Department of Health and everything else will make sure that's stopped. But with workers' comp, you can't do that. And we're talking injured workers here that are being affected, not just anybody. I mean, our injured workers, the people we want to get back to work, who want to get back to work, but under circumstances that they really can't control, and if they're not under constant supervision, I can see where it'd be very easy to get addicted. And those lives end up a lot of times ruined.
Yeah, yeah. And the family lives around them and what it does to companies and the whole business community in Pennsylvania, it just throws everything on a balance.
I can't emphasize enough how important this is. And if other states have done it and they're patting themselves on the back that they finally did it. Ohio did it in 2011, 50% reduction. I mean, that's significant.
Well, you mentioned the nonpartisan nature of the bill and the fact that so many signed on to it from both sides of the aisle.
It had a struggle in the House. It was the first time in my 18 years. The first vote was 99-99. That has never happened in my 18 years down there. But they came back the second time, and I'll give credit to Speaker Turzai. They got it, and Dave Reed. They got it through 102 to 98 or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact, but they got it through. But the trial bar was already activated. And once again, I'm not talking about injury lawyers in general. I'm talking about the specific firm or firms in Philadelphia that found this loophole that needs to be closed. and closed now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that you talk about collusion.
Oh,
There's collusion when you're actually creating the whole system and then channeling people right through it.
and it's worth millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah. All right. So that's one issue I know that has been a burr under your saddle here for a while.
Yes, sir.
But on a happier note, you are here
Yes.
in the middle of summer, and you're not trapped in your office in Harrisburg because we got a budget enacted. What's your reaction to the way the budget worked this year?
Well, I think there were some significant factors. Number one being this is an election year for everybody in the House, for half the Senate, and the governor. All right, so everybody wanted to get back home. They didn't want any controversy. They didn't want budget fights. They didn't want us having going into August, September, October with elections right there in front of us. I think that had a lot to do with it. I've never gone through the caucus process prior to a budget vote. Has always been pretty contentious. This time, everything was agreed upon. I mean, it just flew through. And, being the skeptic I sometimes can be, I think a lot of it had to do exactly with what I said. The fact it was an election year.
Yeah. Well, that being the case, how involved are the members in that process? Because it seemed to me like this came up in a couple of days. They said, we're going to meet, we're going to start, we're done. And it didn't seem like there was much chance for the members of the Senate and of the House to actually ask questions, get details, and participate in the whole process.
It was as quiet as I've seen Harrisburg ever. I mean, lobbyists were running around, they couldn't grasp what was going on because normally they're fighting for one issue or another. This was, we all sat down and sang songs. I mean, it was just, kumbaya. And I can't, I'm in a political environment each and every day. And I haven't seen this in 18 years. Never a budget like this.
Well, all that being the case, is it a good budget?
I think it's a reasonable budget. If I were king, would it changed a little bit? I mean, I hate pouring more money into public education without redeeming results. And we haven't necessarily seen that. Let's face it, one of the strongest unions down there is PSEA. They and the trial bar pretty much dominate that scene. And the public workers, that union. But I think that's where I would have pushed back a little bit on the increase in education funding. Now, he's recently come out, he wants a new formulary for dispersing the education funds, and if he gets his way, which he won't, it would really hurt a lot of our rural schools and pump up the schools in Philly and Pittsburgh.
Well, he being Governor Wolf, and
Right.
we've heard that proposal from the governor really aims at Philadelphia.
Aims at Philly, and but even there are Democrats that have stood up and said, I have Democrats in rural districts too. They're saying, hey, this doesn't fly.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll get to first base, but it shows you his mindset. I mean, let's not forget, this governor, in his first budget, wanted us to increase taxes by $4 billion. $4 billion. That's how I think naive he was politically. I mean, even his own party turned their back on him. That was outrageous. And he's lucky he didn't have it wasn't a one-year term, because he would have been one and done. And I think he's out there leading now, and he's going to dole out his little projects throughout the summer and use that politically to push up his numbers. But I'm a huge supporter of Scott Wagner. He's a self-made man. I really think he's going to make inroads as the summer progresses. And we'll see what happens in November. The odds aren't real good. It's tough to beat an incumbent. But this guy's working his rear end off all across this Commonwealth, visiting, talking to people. And I think direction Harrisburg is sitting right now and heading is not a good one. I'm glad that this is the final 2 years of my term, that I'll be done. That'll be 20 years. And I'm becoming more and more convinced with each day. I was 50 when I started this job. I'll be 70 when I end it. This is a young man's profession. Really is. It's awfully hard. People have no idea the time spent. And I give great tribute to Dave Reed. There he is with small children. He was able to balance those two, and you have no idea. My daughter was a senior in high school when I ran. A big difference.
Yeah.
He's had three since he's been in office, and he's handled it better than most. I don't know how he's done it, because he is considered a great dad, and he was considered a great leader in Harrisburg.
Yeah. He's going to be missed. He very much will.
Yes, he is.
And so will you when you're done here. But then we've got you you can come on as our political pundit.
Well, I'd be sort of leaning towards the R side. I don't know how well I'd do in that
How fair and
position.
balanced you would be.
Yeah.
What you said when you took this last run, that you wanted to see what it was like to play with the lead, and so you've been doing that this time around. How's it been for you?
Well, this governor, he's about worn out his veto pen. Everything we've tried to do has been, he patted himself on the back about this pension reform bill we did over a year ago. That was something I held my nose and voted for, and it might have been a small step in the right direction, but it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem at all, and we're not going to see any positive effects for it for 20, 25 years. So I was very disappointed in what we came up with. We had a great plan. Senator Pat Brown pushed and pushed, but we just couldn't get by the representation of the unions. Unions pushed back, and we finally said, well, we'll take something in a small piece of the pie versus nothing.
We have to get you in here soon. We're way over time here. The Brian Kilmeade show is going to start in a couple of moments, but we feel like we could talk to you for another couple of hours. Senator White, thanks for coming in to visit with us today.
Always a pleasure, and I love the work and coverage you give to our wonderful town and the relationships you have developed. You have great credibility. Thank you very much.
Our appreciation to you. Senator Don White with us here this morning. We are indeed a little bit over time, so